Welcome. I'm Pop Blender, and here's my non-spoiler review of James Gunn's Superman 2025. Superman is a movie that has had a strange marketing campaign. We've gotten several small clips on social media, trailers that give us zero sense of plot, and a large dose of James Gunn. Going into the theater, I had no idea what kind of movie I was in for. And what I got was a film that moves at breakneck speed, has little time for interpersonal relationships, and presents a bevy of characters to the audience. And yet, it's entertaining, sometimes funny, and it does have heart. So let's get into it. Superman spends much of the film being on the defensive. Whether emotionally or physically, the Man of Steel is constantly on the back foot. We get a sense that this version of Superman is still doing on the job training, or it's the first time he's ever been bested. At least that's what the on screen exposition tells us. Either way, Superman needs help often, but not always. The relationship between Lois and Clark isn't explored much. Even though we're 3 months into them dating, we don't get any backstory about how they got together. There are scenes in the movie between them, and one heated scene in particular, but overall, their relationship isn't developed much. It's just there. The film could have benefited from an extra 15 or 20 minutes of development of plot and history, showing us Superman winning the public's trust and becoming the hero that they love at the beginning of this movie. It would have gone a long way considering we're 3 years into Superman being Superman. More screen time for showing us Superman's heroics would have been nice. Um, Before I saw the film, I believed it to be too crowded with other heroes or villains. However, I do believe that the screen time for said heroes and villains is just fine. It's not overused, it's not intrusive. If only maybe we'd have gotten some exposition about how those groups formed or an origin for the villains in particular. I'm guessing the heroes will be fleshed out more in subsequent films, but both groups just kind of show up and are present throughout. It's unfortunate, however, in this movie that Southern stereotypes still permeate and are widely accepted in Hollywood and mainstream media. It's one of the groups of people that are okay to make fun of still and mock without backlash. In this film, Ma and Pa Kent don't even know how to use a phone. While their characters are positive influences on Clark's life, more so than his actual biological parents, they're portrayed as hicks or hillbillies in the most egregious sense of the terms. My thoughts on Superman as a character in the movie are pretty consistent with what I think of a newly born hero who has been raised as human by good old Southern roots folks. Uh, that's what he would be like. He doesn't swear. He has a you shouldn't do that mentality when other heroes are handling problems in a different way than he would, such as the scene with the kaiju. And he comes across as just a genuinely good guy. Now, that doesn't mean he doesn't make mistakes or get frustrated. He has been raised as human after all. And I think the film does a good job of giving us a flawed character, learning on the job, still young, growing into the Man of Steel most people think he should be. Most, I would assume, view Superman as a stoic, calm, 40-ish years old, very mature guy. This version of Superman is not all of those things, and I'm okay with that. The movie is full of exposition, however, and one of the things I didn't like most of all, we're told instead of shown many of the plot points that are key elements in the film. From beginning to end, there are characters who make asides about how someone got their powers or why two countries are at odds. Even Crypto's reason for being in the film is told to us in one or two lines. However, we do get to see someone come for the dog at the end. Nonetheless, as I said, an extra 15 or 20 minutes definitely would have helped solve some of the exposition issues. I do believe the actors do a great job of portraying characters we've seen on screen and in comics for years. I don't have any problems with any of the performances. Some may not like Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor performance, and I'd like to have seen a bit more of Lex's motivations or rise to power. But as an acting job, I'm fine with it. Rachel Brosnahan is good as Lois Lane. She exudes the confidence that Lois has always shown. And other than her piloting skills, I feel as if she nailed the role. David Cornsweet is fantastic as Superman. As Clark Kent, we don't get much on screen. Mostly, he is Superman when shown on screen. Again, he shows confidence, but is also vulnerable enough to make mistakes and still wins the audience over with his wit and his charm. Cornsweet manages to pull off a heroic Superman and a sensitive Superman. While some have serious problems with this duality, I think it gives his character a more rounded appeal. The secondary characters in the movie are all fine as well. Nathan Fillion's Guy Gardner provides the right amount of false bravado that is endearing because he kind of gives off an a-hole vibe, but he means well. Eddie Gathegi's Mr. Terrific almost steals the show. His calm but humorous demeanor is a welcome addition to the cast. Isabella Merced's Hawk Girl, however, is a letdown. She mostly screeches like a hawk when in flight and has a few quips during fight scenes, but she, to me, has little impact. And if she wasn't in the movie, she wouldn't have been missed. Skylar Gizondo's Jimmy Olsen plays a surprisingly crucial role and does a good job with his character. And speaking of surprisingly crucial roles, Sarah Sampaio's Eve Teskmacher plays a major role considering her character is Lex's chick du jour. Maria Gabriela de Faria's engineer is in the film quite a bit. It's a shame this villain only got a passing mention of her origin. The other villain Muscle gets no backstory, even though he is also a major player for Team Lex. The Daily Planet crew, they're all good in their roles, and basically all other side characters are a-okay in my book. One major character that may or may not play well with audiences is Crypto. Of course, dogs generally make audiences turn to mush, but this Crypto is more of a nuisance than endearing. He was written after James Gunn's own dog. His breed was changed, however, for this DCU. And I think Crypto will become a bit of a tired joke over time. He still plays a big part, but the shtick gets old after a while. At least one part of his personality does anyway. Yet, I feel as if most people will welcome the addition to the cast rather than not. Your mileage may vary. There are some contradictions within the movie, however, about Superman's level of care for what's going on at a given moment. There is a scene in the movie that's also in the trailer that gives the audience mixed messages of Superman's love of human life. It seems like a writing misstep rather than an intentional choice. Within the movie, that scene with context makes a little more sense, but it's still confusing. Also, Lex's motivations are made clear, but they're very surface level, considering how complex a character Lex Luthor is in all other media that we've been given before. The film score isn't as good as other Superman movies we've gotten in the past. Its usage of the original John Williams score mixed with some guitar sounds is okay, but it's nowhere near as endearing as Man of Steel or Return of Superman for that matter. And of course, the original 1978 Superman is really the top of the pops for many. The score does leave a lot to be desired. The CGI in the film is sufficient, but some scenes don't look great. One in a rescue scene I can point to off the top. Most won't focus on the effects too hard, and they'd be better off for it. Overall, the movie doesn't suffer from terrible CG, but like most movies these days with thousands of digital effects shots, time allowed to finish may have been an issue with the inconsistencies of them. Most scenes are fine, but nothing we haven't seen before. It's your standard fare of combatants grappling and throwing and slamming and punching. with superpowered strength. There is one big action set piece in the movie and several other smaller ones. The action is fine, but nothing groundbreaking. Lex Luthor doesn't have the strength, but uses his mind in an interesting way to include himself in the fight scenes. I find it difficult to make a Superman movie and give it stakes, however, when our hero and many of the villains are so hard to hurt. It happens here, of course, but knowing Superman is so powerful means the director must create a high stakes movie. That's difficult to do and is on display here as well. There is one major lore change in this movie, and it will make some fans extremely angry. And it's a big one concerning Kal-El's purpose for being on Earth. I do believe that it is setting up plot for future movies in the franchise. And if so, it will be interesting to see how it's handled. Most other possible lore issues don't really come up here because there's not much backstory in the movie to compare to previous entries or comics. Besides, we've gotten many different versions of Superman throughout time. This isn't an origin story after all. I wanted to go into Superman with an open mind. I set aside my preconceived notions and let myself just enjoy the movie on its own terms. While it moves at a pace faster than a speeding bullet, shows Superman less powerful than a locomotive at times, it leaps off the screen in a single bound. This isn't your great grandfather's or your grandfather's Superman. It's not even your father's Superman. But the Superman we got in this movie is a Superman in progress, and that's just fine with me. A recommend for sure. I'm Bob Linder, and I'll see y'all next time.